There is so much ruffle. Many ruffles. Hello my loves, I'm Miss MonMon. Welcome to my channel. Today we are making a dress for no rhyme and reason, but I just kind of want to take you along for the ride. First of all, I am so sorry about this. There is nothing I can do about the noise. I'm doing my best to try and edit it out, but that's the joys of traveling and trying to film. On a recent trip to Singapore, I went to the Ruffles high tea with a friend, and she wore this stunning, colorful gingham dress, which I instantly fell in love with, and it made me want to sew more with gingham. I have always liked the idea of mixing and matching gingham prints. It made me think about old patio dresses, which the skirts are made out of multiple tiered ruffle panels. So I wanted to try and combine that, and that is today's adventure, making a colored gingham vintage dress. The first color combination I wanted to play with were pink and red together, which is my favorite color combination of all time. But then there's already designers making pink and red gingham dresses, and I didn't want to take away their shine, so I thought about pink and orange, which is another one of my favorite color combinations. I loved it, but I wanted a little bit more than two colors, so I thought about adding some yellow to it. This combination kind of reminds me of those Starburst square lollies, so that is sort of my inspiration for this palette. So I went out and bought 2 meters of some pink gingham, some orange gingham, and some yellow gingham, trying to keep the gingham size the same. But unfortunately, my yellow gingham turned out a little bit bigger, but we're just gonna go with it. I decided on this pattern. This is Weigels 2089, and I don't know whether it's pronounced Weigels, Weigels, Weigels. I got told that it is German and therefore pronounced Weigels. So we're doing this one. This pattern is really simple. There is nothing crazy complicated about it, but I mainly chose it because whilst traveling, I am using the world's worst sewing machine. It came from Aldi, and with all the construction work and seeing those massive rubbish bins, the want to push it off the balcony and have it fall and smash in a bin. Yep. Oh, I've thought about it. It's fine. This is going to work. I'm also in a tiny apartment, having to gather a lot of fabric on a machine that hates me. Why do I do this to myself? Let's pass it over to VoiceOver MonMon.
Hey everybody, it's VoiceOver MonMon. As with all patterns, we start by cutting it out. I was very lucky that this pattern already came pre-cut, so I made sure to cut out my bodice first, including some lining, which just had some cheap plain white cotton to do so. Right, so let's talk skirt panel measurements. I wanted my skirt to be about 28 inches, which means that out of the 4 panels, they would need to be about 7 inches wide, and I made them all 8 just because I wanted to make sure I had seam allowance. I ended up having a slightly longer skirt than I originally wanted, but I kind of liked it. So the first pink panel was 1 meter and 30 centimeters long. The orange second panel was 2 meters and 3 centimeters long. The third yellow panel was 317 centimeters long. And the fourth pink panel was 508 centimeters. These measurements will be up here in case you want a visual representation, but I will also have them up on my blog. And I'm sorry that sometimes in the same project I'll use inches and then centimeters. I know that can be a bit confusing. I don't know why my brain does that. For some reason, certain lengths are just easier in one way or another. And yeah, so I'm very sorry if that's confusing, but everything's on the blog in both ways. After getting my machine revved up and ready to go, I began by sewing in the dress bodice darts at the front and the back, and did the same with the lining. I then began attaching the shoulders of the front pieces together, the shoulders of the lining pieces together. I ironed everything flat, put one on top of the other, and sewed it all together. I don't know if I want to go into any more detail than that. It's the same process that I've been using for the last couple of videos, and I just don't want to get too repetitive. Because there is so much skirt paneling, I began by sewing all the pieces I needed together for each color, and then I sewed 2 basting stitches along the top of one panel, and these are what I'm going to use to gather. Because the pieces are quite long, the best way to do this is by folding each panel into quarters. And I made sure to mark out where each quarter section was by putting pins at the top and bottom, because when we line it up with the other coloured panels, all we have to do is make sure each quarter mark is lined up and your gathers will be as even as you can get them. Our first panel is technically the pink panel, but I'm not going to gather the top waistline band because we'll do that as the last step for the skirt. After marking out the quarterly points for both the pink and the orange panels, it works best if you line up the 2 middle points, pin that down, and then work your way out by pushing the gathers along your thread line and doing 1 quarter at a time. So I push all the gathers down, make sure that the quarter points line up, and once I'm happy with the gather spread, just pin that all together. Take your time making sure your gathers are perfect because you want to make sure your skirt will look as lovely as possible. And we have our first 2 panels done. Very cute. Bringing that over to the machine, I then sewed those 2 panels together. And now we repeat the process. So each panel gets 2 rows of gathering stitches. I mark out the quarters, match the quarter with the piece above, move the gathers along the basting stitches, pin it all together, and then sew. I really hope that this is the best way to explain it, but I would definitely recommend paying attention because when I was sewing this final pink layer, I thought I was almost done. Everything was looking promising, and it was about here that I realized I could see a seam on the yellow panel, which means I had sewn it on the wrong way around, and I was a little bit upset. Mistakes do still happen, and I was really tired, but my husband had some very wise words.
It's part of the process, right? Monty, Lily, if we hover over any of these,
Hey!
Instead of unpicking the entire layer, I ended up just unpicking the seam that I could see, flipping it inside out, and then sort of re-sewing it to the back, and then just fixing it up where it met the panel above. It worked out. Mistakes always happen when you sew, especially when you're tired, but this is what my skirt was looking like towards the end. There was quite a lot of swish in it, and the last thing I needed to do was to sew another 2 rows of gathering stitches to the very top. And because I had already marked out my quarters, I quartered up my bodice, aligned those marks, gathered and pinned it all together, and then I sewed the skirt to the waistband. I would have normally overlocked everything at this point, all the seams, but because I don't have one here in Canberra, I just went ahead and pinking sheared everything. The last thing I needed to do was close up the back of the skirt, which I did with a normal straight stitch. And we are on the home stretch, guys. There is light at the end of the tunnel. With the skirt back sewn up, I use this time to iron on my new label. And once that was attached, I also pressed the zipper area open just to make installation of the zipper a little bit easier. This is something I should really do for every dress, but I can get a little bit lazy. I quickly popped in a zip, and I kind of wish I fitted the dress because she was a little bit on the larger side and I could have brought her in by about an inch, but maybe something comfy for the summer is good. The last thing I needed to do was hem, and oh my gosh, she's done.
Okay, I don't hate it. Wearing this dress is a lot more fun than making it. I would absolutely make sure that you have an overlocker, especially if you are using something like the Gingham, which just frayed. I wanted to overlock everything, but I just don't have my machine with me. So I ended up going back after making it and just pinking sheared everything on the inside so it'll stop the fraying. I am not mad at the outcome. I kind of wish I changed the colors around, which I knew was a very possible scenario for me. I kind of wish I went orange on the top and then played around with the skirt, but I'm not mad at the yellow being on top. It also means that I can wear multiple cardigans with this dress, which is always something that I like to do. If you'd like to see photos of this dress and the process, I have all that on my blog, which is linked in the description box below. I will also have all the measurements for all the tiers there. I'm going to say that when it came to deciding how much length goes into each panel, I got my measurements from this gorgeous YouTuber, Paper Stars, and this video is of hers, which is amazing. Her dress came out so cute and I thought they had really great measurements, so why not? Thank you so much for joining me on another vintage sewing adventure. Please feel free to like, comment and subscribe to my channel or find me on any of my social media. I would love to have you guys there, and being able to interact with you is absolutely adorable, and hearing about your day is just a bit of a highlight for me. Wow, am I really that dull that I take so much pleasure in the lives of people? Yeah, I do. I will be back next week with a brand new video. No idea what it could be. Sky's the limit. But until then, be kind, be true, be you, and have a beautiful week. Bye! I am still pulling out thread.